Hello, my name's Lizzie. I'm Anglican. In 3.5 months' time, I'm going to be moving into a convent ready to become a postulant. And I expect in some videos I might have made passing mention to the fact that I trained to be a priest. Or if I haven't yet mentioned it, I'm sure I will in passing at some point in in these videos because it's all part of my kind of vocation story so far, or my sort of discernment journey. So I thought I would just make a video just trying to give a summary of how me training to be a priest, um, how that fits into this wider story of trying to discern where God wants me in the world, basically.
I will hold your people in my heart.
If you've seen my video about my kind of spiritual background, you'll know that I spent most of my um, from age 8 to 18, I spent more time during the year at school than I did at home because I went to a boarding school, and it was more quite an evangelical, charismatic kind of setting that I was in, and especially a lot of my friends were more charismatic, and I go to more like charismatic events at the weekends maybe. And I remember when I was 14, I was at um, some kind of prayer evening, and people were praying with me. And the group of people that were praying with me, they said that they felt that they had like a prophecy or something to that effect. And they said that they felt that I would be some kind of spiritual leader of some description in the future. And I just remember, I still remember it just because I used to be really shy, believe it or not, and really quiet. But yeah, especially when I was really young, I was really shy. But even when I was 14, I was still very shy. So I just remember thinking that'd be really weird because I can't really imagine myself as a sort of either public speaking or in a leader kind of role at all because I was so shy. But I always remembered that, and then that came into play a few years later, just in my thinking, when increasingly people started saying to me that they wondered if I was called to be a priest, and various people were saying it, like both friends and I think maybe one or two people in my congregation in the holidays when I was back at home, and particularly between ending school and starting uni, I had a gap year, and I spent a lot of that in Kenya in a village. And the Christian charity or project that I went out with, our ethos was that we didn't have a specific project in mind to be doing in the village we were in. We would let the community get to know us and get a feel for what gifts they felt God had given us, and then they would get us to use our gifts in their community in the way that they discerned was the right thing for us to be doing. And for whatever reason, I can't remember how it all started, but the priest and the people in a community that I was living in, they felt that I had a gift for preaching. So one of the things that I ended up doing quite a lot in Kenya when I was about 19 was being asked to preach in different churches or in that village and then in surrounding villages as well. And some of those people were saying that they felt I was called to be a priest. And at the time, I hadn't been sure what to study at uni, and I didn't even really know what theology was. But when I'd been praying about what to do at uni, the word theology came to my mind. And when I found out what it was, I thought actually I could see myself being really interested in that because it's got bits of history and bits of languages and bits of philosophy and um, bits of Bible study and all this kind of stuff. So when I had chosen to study theology at uni, I hadn't done it because I felt called to be a priest. It was more um, having got my uni application sent off and going on this gap year. That was when people were increasingly saying that they felt that I might be called to be a priest, and so it was almost a coincidence perhaps that I happened to have chosen to study theology anyway at uni. So it was about that time when I was starting at uni that in the holidays I then, first of all, I went to see a vocations advisor, and it was so long ago now. This was when I was about 19 still. I really can't remember the conversation, but I must have said something to the fact that I was starting to wonder if I was called to be a priest, and various other people were saying it, and people were saying things like they could see me, they felt I had a gift for preaching and teaching, and they felt that I had a gift for leadership. That's what other people were saying about me. And then for myself, I felt that I possibly was called to a kind of Christian teaching or preaching kind of role, or you know, when some, I don't know what you'd call it, when someone leads like quiet days or retreats, that kind of role I could see myself doing in the future. And I felt called to, I did feel like I was called to some kind of, well, definitely to full-time ministry. I definitely felt I was called to that, and I felt called to be some kind of maybe spiritual, I wouldn't have used the word leader, maybe like mother, spiritual mother, or spiritual big sister or something. But all those things, I could see how they all linked with the role of a priest, and other people were using the word priest. So I went to the vocations advisor, and I guess they felt, yeah, all of these things look like the sort of things someone would be feeling if they were called to be a priest. And the very fact that other people feel you might be called to be a priest kind of reinforces that. And so when someone like sort of approaches the Church of England feeling that they might be called to be a priest, there's a whole set of things that they look for, like are other people sensing that too, which they were in my case. And then there's almost like a checklist. You can find it on the Church of England website somewhere, but there's a checklist of certain I think they were called qualities that they look for. I can't remember now what all of them were, but I was asked to, I think the vocations advisor that I very first spoke to, I guess they felt that maybe I did seem to tick the checklist of the kinds of, or I did seem to be like the kind of person that was being called to be a priest. I did seem to match the kinds of qualities that the Church of England feel shows you are called to be a priest. So I was then linked up with someone who actually meets up with you over a few years if you are feeling that you are called to be a priest, and that person that meets up with you, I don't know how regularly other people do it, because I was at uni. I just had to meet up with them usually like every holiday, like Christmas, Easter, and maybe twice in the summer, and they were called a diocesan director of ordinands, or DDO for short. So when I was 19, I basically got set up on that track of meeting up with this person over my different holidays while I was at uni, and over time we went through these different qualities, and I think I had to write reflections as well, and they were trying to discern, did I seem to tick all the boxes of they're kind of like boxes that of what helps the Church of England discern if you are genuinely called to be a priest. And the person that was meeting me in the holidays, they felt that I was called to be a priest. And so after a certain length of time, I think it was probably about 2 years of meeting up with them regularly, I then went forward to, it used to be called National Selection Conference. I think it's still now called Bishop's Advisory Panel, and they changed it a bit just as I got to it. I think I was the first person on their sort of new way of doing it. But anyway, when I was about 20, 21 possibly. No, I think it was 20. I don't know. But just before my last year at uni, basically. In the summer holidays, I went to this bishop's advisory panel where a few of you go. I think there are about 11 of us. I think there would normally be about 16. And by this time you've been given references from people that know you, and the DDO that you've been meeting up with has written a report on how you seem to match all this kind of checklist of qualities that suggest you are called to be a priest. And so you go to this sort of residential thing for, I think it was 3 days, and you have further interviews, and you do a presentation, and I can't remember the other things you do now because it was so long ago, but it's like a 3-day intensive interview in a way, and there's a panel of, it might have been 3 or 4 people, and they're kind of trying to assess or discern whether this is what they feel God's calling you to as well. And that after the end of the 3 days that you're there, you go home, and I think they stay on for another day just to think about what they've seen of you and pray about it. And if all of the panel feel that you are called to be a priest, then they write to your bishop and they say, yeah, we recommend them to go and train to be a priest. So I did that, and they did recommend me, or they did say to my bishop that they felt I was called to be a priest. And so I then, that's when I then went to train to be a priest. And even when I was training, and I was training to be a priest for 3 years in the end, I only needed to train for 2 years because I'd done theology already, but I got a scholarship to go to where they train, a college where they train priests, but in California for a year, so I kind of got a bonus year. So I was there for 3 years in total, and we'd have reports at the end of each year, and we'd have a placement in the summer where you spent a month with a priest, kind of shadowing them and getting a real feel for what parish ministry might be like. And it was at the end of my, I can't remember when it was now, but I remember my summer placement in particular. I spent a month with a priest on the council estate, and that was more the kind of ministry that I felt called to, and I was just so in my element. And even at my theological college where I was training to be a priest, I was getting like good reports in the things that I was doing. And when I got back from my summer placement where I spent a month with this priest, they wrote a report on how they'd found me in that setting of parish ministry, and my college, like my tutor, wrote a note to me saying that my placement report was the best summer placement report that they'd ever read for an ordinand. So I'm not saying that to show off. I'm trying to explain how sometimes something can look really right to a lot of people, but it still might not be where God wants you. So that's what I'm trying to explain, that like why, yeah, that's what I'm trying to explain anyway. So it got to, that was at the end of my penultimate year at theological college when I had this summer placement report and this comment from my tutor. So even then it was looking like the reports I was getting were really affirmative, and really encouraging, and it really looked like I was suited to parish ministry. Now I definitely felt a lot more at home on that month on the council estate than I did at the college, and I'll explain that in a bit more detail in a minute. But so we started into my final year when I was training to be a priest, and we started looking at that was when you start looking at where you're going to go and be, where you're going to go and start ordained ministry once you've finished your training. So we were actually looking at it's called a curacy. We were looking at a curacy for me in Salford near Manchester, and we were sort of starting the process of the principal of the college having conversations with the the priest who had trained me there. And then it got to towards Christmas, at the end of my first term there, and that was when, I'll explain in the next video, on the surface, in terms of the fact that I was getting really good reports and I felt so at home on this summer placement in this council estate, on the surface it really looked like the right thing for me, but lots of things at the same time, while I was training to be a priest, lots of things somehow weren't feeling right, and there were times when I really wasn't sure I was in the right place. And this is what I'll explain it in the second video of this kind of two-part little series explanation. But so it got to the first term of my final year, and I was praying about all of this. Where does God want me, and what is this kind of sense of something's not quite right? And that was when I felt God say to me, please can you go to the principal and say, I can't remember, I didn't feel like I wasn't called to be a priest, but I definitely felt that God was asking me to at least like press the pause button on me becoming a priest. So that's when, like, with 2 terms to go, and I still completed all my training and assignments and everything, but with 2 terms to go, that was when I basically went to the principal and said that I've been praying about it, and for whatever reason I feel actually like God's asking me to press the pause button on me becoming a priest. And at the time, the principal said he didn't see any reason why I should. Like, he couldn't see, he didn't feel like it wasn't right for me to be a priest, or why there was a reason for me to maybe like postpone becoming a priest. But if that's what I felt God was asking of me, or if that's what I felt was right, then he would support me in that. So that's where we get to at the end of the first term of my final year. And the second video, the video I'll make after this, will explain more of that, why there was something that felt not right about me becoming a priest, and or at least not then, and kind of what happened after that in the how things unfolded after that.